top of page 45. This is top of page 45, and this is an assessment of virtue and morality. And all right, assessment of virtue and morality. First point, quote from Nietzsche, note 255, all virtues are really refined passions and enhanced state, pity and love of mankind's development of the sexual drive. Justice is development of the drive to revenge. Virtue is pleasure in resistance, will to power. Honor is recognition of the similar and equal in power. So in note 255, what we get is the following, right? We have virtue is refined passion. Right? Virtue is a refined passion. 2b, he says pity and love. Sexual drive. It's funny because this is sort of a bit of a precursor, right? A bit of a precursor to psychoanalysis, psychological assessment of the relationship between our desires and, in a sense, the way in which the individual interprets many different things, specifically my recognition and my relationship to myself and the external world. We saw this in the oneric rebus, to be technical, insofar as we talk about the, and this is in my semiotics lecture, so this might be way out, but I'm sorry, since I brought it up, I'm not going to clarify what it is because it's a whole other discourse. But insofar as we talk about the oneric rebus, we recognize that it is a problem to be solved. But the problem isn't a problem of the world, it's a problem of my mind. My mind is such that in a state of dormant rest, I take symbols, and I don't even actually take symbols, the external world becomes symbolic, and my relationship between myself and the external world is a riddle to be solved. Why did I dream about X? Why am I dreaming about Y? Because I have a particular fear, desire, I have a particular interaction, a drive, that manifests itself symbolically, subconsciously, unconsciously, primarily in moments of dormant states of sleep. And the whole process is a recognition of why those symbols reoccur, which will help me understand who I am in the world. I mean, there is some validity to, you know, there's quite a bit of validity to the psychological process when it's done well, right? When it's done well. See, justice is a drive to revenge, right? D, virtue, pleasure in resistance, will to power. So that we see virtue reoccurring, right? Virtue, pleasure in resistance, will to power. It's actually, the explanation part for pleasure in resistance isn't really too difficult to understand. All it's saying is that there is virtue, to further understand the idea of will to power, there is virtue, not in this sort of cliched, sort of virtue ethics-based sense, in doing the right action because the right action is prescribed by some ethical system in a deontological Kantian sense. But there is virtue in resisting. And what is it that I'm resisting? I'm resisting, I'll use myself as an example just to make this clear because I don't want to get too deep. We've been very, very deep up until this point, so I'm going to lighten it up a little bit. But there is, in a very sort of general sense, there is virtue for me in resisting the things that would otherwise tempt me. the person who I am, recognizing me, myself. This is like me really talking to I mean, literally, I'm talking to myself, but can't think of it like that. Me thinking quietly to myself, by myself, despite the fact that I know this is going to be transmitted to the world, I am by myself for an incredible amount of time. And in the quiet, by myself, thinking of myself, I could be sleeping right now. I could be laying down. I could be resting. I don't need to be working. I don't need to be working. I don't. I'm not doing it for the money. I'm not doing it for the accolades, for sure. I'm not doing it for anything. But that, in sort of an allegorical, mythological sense, is the siren, right? It's the, if you're on the boat, it's the mermaid who's at the bottom of the ocean singing a song that's so beautiful, and you just wanna see. And as soon as you stray too far, you fall over. If you're in the forest and you stray too deep into the woods, they grab you, right? So there is a sense, there is a pleasure in, for me, recognizing that I am someone who's driven to work at absurd levels. There's a certain sense of complacency that I have to have in the fact that the sirens are there, but they don't really taunt me anymore, right? They're always there. They're always trying to pull me off my path. They're always trying to get me off of the path of actualizing the power that I have within me. But that desire, that drive, that will to power within me is so intense that it could be a procession of sirens. They're not going to get me off my path, right? So it's just, it's weird when you really say it, right? When you put yourself in it and you're like, no, Jason, yeah, the truth, what is the truth right now? The truth is I'm in a room in my office in the absolute silence. If I'm quiet, it's just me. It's just me. And all of the interaction that I get on Facebook and YouTube and back and forth and the discussion points that I have after the fact don't correspond to the moment right now. Right now, it's just me. And what propels this process for me isn't the back and forth later. It really is just right now. And right now, there's virtue in resisting and that resistance. So when we talk about virtue, that pleasure in resistance, Nietzsche says, is at this general level synonymous with virtue, synonymous with this will to power, right? There is virtue, there is power in resisting the call of the sirens, right? If you do so in full recognition and regimented focus as to what the goal is. The goal is actualizing more power, at least for me, right? E, honor, right? Honor, recognition of equal power, right? Right? A recognition of equal power. Me, my absolute fascination. There's sort of two fields that I love to recognize, and it's sort of a recognition of equal power. We do different things. I love physicists. Part of me is a huge closeted physicist, and I know if I would have discovered it earlier, I have a mathematical mind. I can't say I would be as good as the best physicist, but I'd be a decent physicist, I think. I love how they engage philosophical ideas. They're probably the last discipline in the world that gives us some merit of credit, right? Physicists, they try to identify and actualize the craziness that we have in our mind as philosophers. So physicists and philosophers always have a pretty interesting exchange, right? They're looking for the truths of reality. They're not going to use metaphysics. There really isn't a metaphysics after Kant. You sort of put a nail in that, the bastard. But physicists, they do dabble. They dabble in the darkness like we do, right? So I think that's cool. And there's a recognition. There's a recognition that what you do is pretty powerful. And they recognize that what we do is pretty powerful. So we feed each other. But also, I think art And later we'll see even Nietzsche himself will go really deep into sort of